dysfunctional vet. I'm getting ready to build a saddle tree rack, or a saddle rack. It has both names. Sometimes it's a saddle rack, sometimes it's a saddle tree. Technically, a saddle tree is the wood that's underneath a saddle. And I'm not going to go into all the dimensions and details of building a saddle tree in order to assemble a saddle, because that's outside of my expertise. This is my stock right here. I'm shorted one piece. I'm told it should be here before too very long. So right now what I'm getting ready to do is I'm going to be cutting this flat stock, 3 pieces 3 feet long, which will be wall anchors. This is going to be used at a place where they try to help people rehab. So some of the people could have problems with balance or other issues. So this is going to actually physically bolt to the wall, and I'll be showing you that as we get this thing more completed. And I'll show you a white paper on it before too long. One last thing before I get too far along. Now I cut this metal, and as you can see I labeled it a base, and that is the part that goes to the front. FTE, the front. UFO. Now, here I have my bars, right? It says trim for bar. This one was a bit long, and so it didn't end up in the stack. I had to cut off, I think, a 1/2 inch. Now, right here, you see this is my upright. These are the pieces that are going to be rising up. And then, of course, the supports that are going to be holding the saddles will be mounted to this section to ensure that I get the end that's the most square, because I check that. I put an arrow pointing up and I write up. So I know that this distal end right here is going to be my base end, and it's going to be the flattest and the smoothest cut. All of my cuts have a bit of a bevel. These have the least bevel in them. And I'm not even going to show you what it, well, I will. On this, in order to get these pieces square, I use the flat piece with the hole in it as my absolute, and then I put a framing square or a tri-square against this to get that bottom piece square. I actually put the edge of the tri-square against this, and then I squared this up to that. This is my absolute here. So that's how I did that. And in this case, just because I wanted to kind of experiment, I put my 2 on the side, which I already told you I was doing that, and then I stuck 1 in the middle just for fun, you know, what the heck. These tell me my outside edges. And next step, my stock is 1x2. These plates right out here are 5 inches long. They've been drilled to a 3/8 inch for anchor bolts. What I've done is I found my center line indicated by these 2 dots. You can't see it, but it's there. These tell me my outside edges. And next step, right here, what I have is I'm getting ready to weld this, or tack this piece together before I actually weld it. I've taken a small tri-square, the 6 inch. I found which piece of my upright, which is this piece, is the most level on the bottom. I've put this to it. I'm getting ready to vise it into place once I put a framing square against this, actually a speed square, to get that level straight. My jig consists of a piece of old bedpost or bed frame, and then 1/2 inch, I believe it's a type of C-channel. I'll show you that later. Once I get this square and vise down, I'll tack it with the wire welder, and once I get all of them done, then I'm going to come back and hit them with the I'm going to hit them with a rod. Alright, I've got this pretty much on here. I've got it tied with another vise or clamp, I'm going to use a hammer and get this square center line to center line. I'll be using this speed square to make sure everything's straight. As you can see, there's a little bit of separation. It needs a little bit of adjustment. Once I get it absolutely square, I'll double check it again. Now I can't really check it on this side because of this clamp, but right here I know I'm square, and I know I'm square. This when it's upright, it'll be square. So the next thing to do will be to get this thing square, tap in it with a hammer very gently as I tighten up on this clamp, and then once I have it exactly square, I'll tack this side, I'll tack the opposite side, and then I'll get it ready for my rod welder. My wire welder is not strong enough as far as heat goes to really weld this properly, so I want to use my other welder for that. It will tack it, that's not an issue. And one other thing, I've had this Forney Easy Weld, I think it's an IF40 or something like that. I've had it for quite some time. I'm getting close down to the end of the reel, and I had to adjust the tension a little bit. Apparently it's really tightly wound at the core as you get to the bottom. So if you run into that problem where it's not feeding, just tension your rollers and you should be good. This is late in the afternoon. As you can see, the feet are welded on. I ran a bead between the curve, you can see that curve, and the flat of the other stock, and then I came back and I ran a weave around that to really strengthen this. Now the base looks kind of crappy. I'm not going to claim to be a real good welder. The sides right here have been very secured, but as we move around to this side right here, let me get out of the shadow here, I ran a weave between the base metal and the upright, and that's on both sides. And there's also a weave, well, sort of a weave, right here as well. Now what I've done is I've taken my sander, and well, it's my grinder with a sanding blade. It's a non-abrasive, it removes scale, but it doesn't really do anything for metal. I mean, you can grind all day and you're not going to move metal. Anyway, I took that and I removed all the scale off of this. After I did that, then I took navel jelly, which is removes oxygen out of metals to stop the rust, and I ran that over it for about 8 minutes. Then I rinsed it off, I dried it off. I used I'll have to look and put it in the description to clean the metal, and then I went back and I primed it with Krylon primer. It's an enamel primer, and I don't know if the client is going to want white or black or some other color for this thing to be painted. As soon as I find out, then I will get the proper paint and we'll paint this. But for now, it's primer gray. And as you can see, I only cleaned up the bottom part of this because I've got to start welding the cross pieces for the saddle rack. And this thing is 6 foot tall, 60 inches. And I'm thinking that whoever's throwing a saddle up there has got to be in pretty good shape. But I'm just building it to the spec requested. With that said, Dysfunctional Vet is out. This is the end of part 1. I hope that you'll look for part 2 where you start seeing the thing come together. And I'll explain a whole lot about the making of this thing and the problems I ran into.